Well, this is the show that I wanted to do last week, but we didn't know the results of the election last week, so I couldn't do it. But I'll tell you what, you'll be glad that we waited. Khari Mosley is here. Welcome to the show, sir. You know,
Great.
I
Thank
mean,
you. Thank you for having me.
we were just kind of all waiting around last week. We didn't know what the end result was going to be. And then
Sure.
a week ago, Saturday, we hear that the Harris Biden ticket has won the election. They're now the president elect, vice president elect, but not everyone agrees with that.
Right.
But
Right.
but now here we are a week later and we're still trying to figure this out. So here's kind of where we are. Georgia is doing a hand recount of their votes. Many within the Republican Party say they don't want to accept the results as they are, but I want to take a look at how the voting happened, who voted for who, what the voters look like, and I think that one of the where I want to start with this with you, Khari, is what was it about this election that we saw so many people come out to the polls willing to wade through a pandemic, stand in line, even with the early voting? People wanted to make sure their votes were there this time. What do you think it was?
Absolutely. I think it was a number of factors. I think one, it was the realization of a Trump presidency for many people that
Hmm.
may have sat out 2016 because folks thought it was kind of outside the realm of possibility.
Hmm.
So folks that weren't really enthusiastic about Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump kind of stayed home. And I think you know, once now that the reality set in after 4 years, folks from that, aside of the perspective, then said, whoa, I can't afford to stay home this time. I think, and also coupled with the variety of options that folks had. Vote by mail has shown to increase turnout in every state. Oregon, is the state that kind of invented it and it kind of wrote
Hmm.
the book on mail voting, and they have some of the highest turnout in the country, and historically so. And studies have shown that mail voting increases turnout because it removes the voting from a narrow 13-hour period on one day to days and weeks. And in some cases, maybe a month and a half before the election, you have people voting. In
Hmm.
Philadelphia, for 5 weeks up until the election, they had 17 sites around the city where people could register and vote up until October 19th, as far as the voter registration deadline. But even after that, they could go and vote there early at 17 sites throughout the city of Philadelphia. So voters had a lot of different options to be able to vote. But then also is the phenomenon of Donald Trump, who has shown a unique ability to motivate low propensity, which means unlikely white voters, particularly in the key states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, where all the states set records. Pennsylvania set a record, Allegheny County set a record. But I think it's the combination of folks that were voting for Biden having a variety of options to get their voices heard prior to election day and on election day, and then Trump's ability to motivate these working class white voters that really had no voting history, similar to the diverse coalition that Obama built, where there were so many voters of color that
Mm.
had never voted before that voted for Obama. Trump seems to have the same kind of phenomenon with working class white voters who generally don't vote in elections.
Hmm.
And you see the results from the 2018 midterms where Trump wasn't on the ballot and a lot of those seats flipped.
So if you take that understanding, how do you keep these people engaged in the system? Because in 18, you didn't have, well, you didn't have either one of those. So the turnout wasn't as great. Well, let me go back. In 16, when you didn't have Obama on the ticket and folks weren't excited about Hillary, people didn't come out to vote. The turnout was low. And then there was a little bit of a bump in 18 because there were some people who weren't necessarily very happy. Women, I guess, to a large extent in 18.
Right.
But the realities are you got to keep these people engaged in the process. How do you do that?
That's a great question. I think engaging people in the other arenas of power outside of electoral politics, I think that was one thing that didn't happen after Obama first got elected. We elected Obama and then we all kind of sat back on our laurels, and then the Tea Party came. where I think this time folks have to become much more engaged in the policy making process. Being more engaged about whatever this agenda from the Biden-Harris administration is going to be, and take a more active role in helping move that agenda forward, to engage in the other elements and not thinking that, okay, we're just going to try to turn these folks out to vote every 4 years of presidential elections. But we're going to really get folks, also engaged in local elections, of course, but also engaged in the policy fights that are going to come, whether it's around infrastructure, whether it's around criminal justice reform, whether it's around climate change, whatever those issues are, folks are going to have to be engaged in the issues beyond, just voting, whether it's by mail or at the poll or voting early.
Because one of the things, and I'll throw this out there and we'll talk about it a little bit now and then pick it up after the break, because as this, I don't know what to call it, this debate, this argument about the votes and fraud and all these things have come up since the election, there are a lot of people who voted at the top of the ballot and didn't even deal with the rest of the ballot. And so that has created a lot of questions in some people's minds about, well, how could this happen? Because some people only voted for the president and the vice president. They didn't even look at the rest of the ballot.
Absolutely.
And that's a problem too, that people didn't vote all the way down ticket.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it was, this was the first election that we had where there was no straight ticket voting in Pennsylvania. That was part of the compromise to get vote by mail passed in 2019. Historically, Democratic and Republican candidates would get, tremendous votes down ticket just when people clicked the ticket, but
pull the lever,
that was not an available option. And clearly, down ticket, you can see Democrats were impacted, by the combination of folks not voting down ballot, ignoring down ballot, and then the folks who would have normally voted straight ticket, may have also, missed voting down ballot as well, because, a lot of these folks aren't used to really kind of looking at the names. If you historically just click the lever, you don't go all the way down and look at the name. You just said, I'm voting for all the Democrats. So this would be the first election for those who historically have voted like that to actually have to go through the entire ballot. And I think that affected, candidates. And I think clearly it showed that somehow the Trump campaign was able to not only get folks to vote for Trump, but get Republicans that were coming out, particularly these unlikely white voters. And I think these are the voters that don't show up on the polling. They're unlikely voters. They're not showing up on the polling, but they're showing up on election day. And not only are they voting for Trump, but they were voting for every Republican up and down the ticket. And I think that's how somebody like Tim DeFore, that African-American county controller from Dauphin in Harrisburg, gets elected statewide in an upset, the first Republican auditor general in, I think, 30 years. So I think there was a number of factors that, that played into, to this phenomenon where Josh Shapiro and Joe Biden do very well statewide, and then down ballot, Democrats really suffered some really tremendous losses, even including the Democratic leader of the House, Frank Dermody, lost his reelection.
Right, after like 30 years, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So and when you see, and he represents Allegheny County, where there was tremendous turnout, historic turnout, particularly for Biden. I mean, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris come out of Allegheny County with probably 75,000 more votes than Obama Biden did in 2008. And that was a historic turnout. I mean, Obama Biden probably got 375,000 votes in 2008. And, at this point, Biden Harris, they're approaching 450,000 votes countywide. Wow. I mean, that's just astronomical numbers that we've never seen. Before.
Hold that thought. We got to take a commercial break. I want to talk about, so who are these people who were voting? We'll talk about that when the show continues. Don't go away.